I'd rather be undead, a Duthael tale. When Duthael was still young and unexplored, it became customary to arrange marriages between families to keep humanity strong and united against the evils lurking in the wilderness. One of the young women from the kingdom of Duthael turned 16, the age of common marriage. Her father, the blacksmith for the army, wanted her to marry her way into the royal family. The problem stood, however, that the only prince was a boorish and decrepit old man named Fert. Prince Fert had been looking for a wife for 60 years since his own age of common marriage. He stretched up like a giant man, with alabaster skin and dark blue eyes. All traits the people of Duthael understood as unattractive. Still, his connections and riches caught the eye of many people looking for fortune. The weary blacksmith went to the royal court and bragged of his daughter's beauty. Her flowing blonde hair, petite stature, and the grace of her full body sounded like things the prince couldn't resist. With lust set in his eyes, he hungrily commanded the smith to bring his daughter forward. The young woman, Yasm, understood the prince well and had no desire to look upon him. Her selfish father hated being at the beck and call of the army, so he couldn't care less about her wishes. When the blacksmith commanded Yasm to meet with Prince Fert, he acted as perverse and demanding as her own father. "I have to find a way out of this," she thought. She heard tales from women in the common bath of a wizard that helped countless women out of unwanted marriages. So, on the eve of her wedding, she crept out of her father's shop while he worked without passion and stole the strongest horse in the stables. It took half the night, but she found a large cottage in a small marsh to the south of Duthael. The cottage stood on a small island surrounded by puddles of mud. Yasm hopped over each spot of mud to reach the front door. The lavender dress she put on for the wedding turned a wet brown and tore at her heel. Yasm chose to wear her raggedy boots instead of the crystal slippers commanded by her father. Before she could knock, the wizard exited the cottage and jumped when he opened the door. He looked decades older than Prince Fert, if possible. As he smiled at Yasm, she guessed he feigned frailty either to keep her from hurting him or to ease her own nerves. "Oh, my dear, I was just on my way to pick some mushrooms for stew. How can I help you?" Yasm recounted her woes to the wizard, who wore long gray robes, had a haunting milky eye, and shining white hair. His white stubble poked out as if he trimmed it a few days before, which was an unusual custom in Duthael. Tradesmen often shaved if their facial hair fell in the way of their work, but she thought the wizard didn't have a need to do so. "Well, of course, I would be happy to get you out of this affair," the wizard laughed. "But we'll have to change more than just your hair. Are you up to it?" Yasm started to grow anxious as the 3 waning moons in the sky made room for the sun. The prince set the wedding for midday, but her father wanted her in the castle well before then. "I will do whatever it takes," she replied. The wizard smashed several herbs from around the cottage and heated them in a vial over a peculiar magic circle with dozens of lines and shapes within it. Yasm glanced around as he prepared his spell and wondered how anyone could survive with so little in their home. There didn't look to be a place to prepare the stew he told her about. "Take this tincture and drink it on your way back to the city. But don't come back to me looking for pity." She nearly killed her horse as she raced back to the city. The potion, although sweet and easy to drink, left her with a hole in her stomach. Yasm couldn't be sure if the magic started, but she noticed the wind blow through her with a gust. As the sun found its place in the sky, Yasm knew she would have to meet Prince Fert and her father at the castle, or they would find her and force her. She approached the gates and 2 guards hesitantly let her in when she announced her intentions. She found the prince and her father at the altar, hoping the wizard's magic would cause some disaster. When the men saw Yasm, she was sure he delivered on his promise, at least as far as their faces signaled. The blacksmith had furrowed brows and the prince turned green and purple from losing his breath. "Daughter? What have you done?" her father asked. Yasm shrugged as she went to gaze at a crystal mirror. A smirk befit her lips as the magic showed, and she discovered how the old man effectively ended arranged marriages. She no longer resembled the girl that ran from her father and her fate. She was a nightmare, an undead monster that rotted and shambled away. Her long blonde hair had almost all fallen out and her organs hung out of her body. She stared in her reflection's eye, which stayed in place by a thread, and an image of the wizard's own blind eye appeared in her mind. Yasmin stood as if she were going to collapse on herself, but she felt more energy and strength than ever. Fert busied himself with throwing up in the corner, but it was obvious there would be no wedding. Though she missed her hair and her ivory soft skin, Yasmin figured she could lean on more than beauty. The potion did nothing more than make Yasmin appear as a decomposing dead draugr. The wizard related to men well enough to guess that the prince wouldn't be interested in marrying a zombie. He must have guessed enough about Yasmin that she wouldn't care about her appearance. The prince passed away not long after the ordeal and Yasmin took over her father's work for the army. Not only was she more talented with the trade, but she worked happier than her father ever did. Months later, Yasmin went in search for the wizard to thank him but found the cabin in the marsh abandoned. There sat a note on top of the faded magical circle where the wizard made the tincture for her. The smith struggled to read the writing as it faded and the grammar wasn't the best, but Yasmin read, and they lived happily ever after. So, Yasmin returned to Duthael and continued as the best blacksmith in Duthael until death came to greet her. Thanks for watching. Don't forget to like, comment, share, or subscribe if you liked the video.